Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to ZeroViews Tech. It looks like there are more and more cheap low-end devices with smaller and smaller bezels, and the Ulefone Mix 2 is one of them. And so how will this fare? So in terms of specs, the Ulefone Mix 2 contains specs that look very ancient. It has the MTK6737 processor, the 2 gigs of RAM, and an average 3300 milliamp hour battery as well. However, it's got one thing going for it, and that would be its looks. It's an 18:9 aspect ratio phone with fairly slim bezels. However, is this phone the phone to get if you want an S8 or a Mi Mix on a budget? Well, let's find out. So this phone has a metal frame, a glass front, and surprisingly a removable plastic back. And when you take the back off, you will see the battery, the SIM slots, as well as the SD card slot as well. Something I probably have not seen in 6 months of testing devices. So the phone is also fairly heavy, even though it's mostly plastic, most likely because of the metal frame around the phone. That being said, this phone is still pretty easy to use in just one hand, as long as you're satisfied with not being able to reach the top of the phone. The other thing to note is that this has a micro USB port, not a USB-C port, if that's something you care about. Now, when you turn the screen on, you actually see that the bezels around the screen are actually not too big. They're about the same size as what you find on the Ulefone Power 3. They are not tiny either, but they're not sizable either. So all in all, the Ulefone Mix 2 is quite a nice looking budget phone with very small bezels. So here we have a 720 display, or more accurately 1440 by 720, which has the same pixel density as a 720p display. And if you look very, very closely, you can see that this display here is not as crispy as a 1080p display. And the reason why it's difficult is because the display screen looks very nice. It seems like Ulefone is sourcing some very, very good panels for their phones. Color reproduction and saturation are both excellent, almost on par with the Ulefone Power 3 actually. Reds, greens, and blues are all very deep and vivid with good contrast between light and dark areas. It's definitely better than the Redmi 5 Plus in terms of color. The one downside here would be the maximum brightness. It tops out at around 400 nits here, and it's difficult to see in direct sunlight. And this is already at max brightness. You can't go any brighter than this. So here we have one downward firing speaker, and the speakers here are below average in all areas. In terms of volume, doesn't get too loud. The audio quality is also not the best either. First, you don't get lots of bass. There is a little bit of distortion at max volume, and the speakers tend to muddle audio, so it's not very clear. So I'm going to play this clip so you can hear what it sounds like.
Strategy involves the taking of Kashyyyk. While our fleet strikes from orbit, ground units will prevent enemy ships from launching. That is your role. You will escort a multi-ship transport, protect the MTT from clone troopers deploying ion disruptors. Welcome to the war on Kashyyyk. This is the droid army's...
So here we have a fairly small 3300 mAh battery powering the older MTK6737 processor, and I honestly was not expecting very good battery life. But surprisingly, the battery life here is better than expected. I was able to get around 3 hours of heavy usage with about 7% left over 3 days, and that's 3 days, which again is not bad at all, especially for a small 3300 mAh battery. And I want to show you another battery screenshot that I got over here, where I was able to get around 3 hours of screen on time over 2 days, and I had about 30% left. There we go. 2 hours, 47 minutes of screen on time and 30% left. This was after 2 days of use. And of course, the best thing about this is that the battery is removable, so you can just pop in another one if you find somewhere else to buy it, which at the moment, I'm not quite sure where else you can buy the battery. So my usage was mostly YouTube, taking a ton of photos, and reading some news as well. The battery here can definitely satisfy medium users, but heavy users will have to look elsewhere. It's been a very long time since I've used an MTK6737 phone, and I'm reminded by how sluggish it can feel at times. Launching big apps, especially Google Play, takes about 2 to 3 seconds to launch, and there's only 2 gigs of RAM, so multitasking isn't the great either. If I want to try and open something else, it still does take a fairly long time to open. And so you definitely can't store that many apps in memory. And I do feel that the MTK6737 is slower on Android Nougat 7.0 compared to the older Lollipop, where there was less stress placed on the CPU. In terms of gaming, I could play pretty much all the intense games, but as you can see here, the frame rate here isn't very good because the MTK6737 is not that fast anymore, and games are getting more and more intense. The fingerprint sensor here is slightly below average in terms of speed, but the accuracy is okay. I'm going to try it a couple more times. I was able to get LTE on the phone, and the speeds are actually not bad for the older MTK6737 and the network chips inside. It is still a lot slower than flagships and higher end Snapdragon devices, but still it's more than good enough for this phone. Reception here is not as good as I had hoped. It did not get LTE in most places my other phones got LTE, so there is that to consider. Wi-Fi reception is average as well. Go too far and the speeds start dropping dramatically. Bluetooth works fine, but GPS is a little bit slow to lock and it jumps around occasionally as well. I already uploaded a full camera review for the Ulefone Mix 2 on my channel, but a quick recap, it can take some pretty crispy photos, but again, like the Ulefone Power 3, the main problem is the consistency. It takes bad photos more often than it takes good photos, and the bad photos have pretty bad quality and blurriness and are unusable as well. HDR mode works but adds a weird purple tint to the photo, the front cameras suck, and the video quality is average at best, and if your lighting is not ideal, video quality also drops like a stone, so be sure to check out my full camera review up above. So if you want an 18:9 ratio bezel-less phone, you pay a price for that. You either pay a premium to get the 18:9 ratio bezel-less phone, or you pay the same price for worse performance over a regular 16:9 phone with a lot of bezels. So Ulefone Mix 2 is not the best value for money, obviously far from it. Of course, the Redmi 4X at about $130 is way better than this at $130 as well, but you don't get that 18:9 ratio or the bezel-less look. And remember, this phone is actually fairly bezel-less and good looking as well, something you can't really put a price on. And I don't mean that it's priceless. I mean different people value a phone's looks differently, so it's really up to you whether you are willing to pay the same price for a worse product that looks better. Or do you want the best value product that doesn't look as great? And if you do, this is not the phone that you want to get. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Likes and subs would be appreciated. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.